Richard.
What?
When are you gonna finish the house?
Probably after this video, look.
Scott right here, and today's exciting episode we
Just put out a new video.
Shelf for
Do you know what time it is?
Here is the objective.
Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since we put out a video, so I apologize for that. A little mini hiatus there, but we're hoping to get back at it strong. And to start fresh, I'm just gonna show you kind of everything I've learned about installing crown molding for the past nearly decade of doing it. And it's a really simple task to complete. And I'm gonna show you my saw setup. A lot of you guys already know my saw setup. A lot of you haven't seen my little jig here that I made in action, so I'll show you exactly how that works. And then we're gonna go, this is my house, if you remember. We're gonna go up there. I've got a big stack of crown right here. I don't know how much of it we're gonna get through today, being that we're doing a video, and I wanna be as thorough as possible to really show someone who's never done this that they could watch this video and then just do it themselves, which that's gonna take some time. But hey, we're here, we got the time to do it today, and we're gonna do it. This crown right here is the one that we're using. It's a 5 1/4, I believe. I've actually never installed this crown. It's a new crown that one of my suppliers just recently picked up over the past few months. And what's interesting about this crown is that while it looks symmetrical, it looks even, it's not. And I'm gonna tell you why that's very important, because when you cut crown molding in a nested position or even flat, you're gonna definitely wanna have it orientated the right way. So with that, we're gonna get started. Get right into this. We'll show you the crown setup. Like I just mentioned, I cut my crown nested, which means cradled in position, how it will be installed on the wall and ceiling. The advantage of cutting it nested in this cradled position, like you see here, this represents the wall, this represents the ceiling. The advantage of that is you have less movement at the saw, meaning that when you're cutting it nested in that position, you have no bevel that you're messing with. So when you cut your crown flat, you have bevels that you're working with, which means you're spending time coming around, untightening this saw, loosening it up and beveling it in different degrees based on whatever the spring angle of your crown is. With cutting nested, you don't even need to know the spring angle of your crown. You really don't. All you need to know is that there's a flat side on the bottom of this crown that contacts the wall, and there's a flat side on the top of this crown that contacts the ceiling. I'm keeping this very simple. If you just know there's a flat side at the top and a flat side at the bottom, let's just move on from there. You don't need to know spring angle and all that. So honestly, I don't even worry about spring angles. A lot of the crowns that we use a crown that's called a 22 crown that has a 22 spring angle. We use a 48 crown, which is a colonial crown that has a 48-degree spring angle. So, and I never even think about that stuff. So don't even worry about spring angles if you've heard anything about that. This is just basics. So with that, with this crown, what we're gonna do, I'll show you my setup here. Cutting it nested, I have this jig that I built. And if you're interested in this, how I built this, I have about 3 videos on how I made this crown stop jig is what I call it. So it's just these 2 DeWalt brackets. They've got track tubes mounted on them, and they've got this PVC crown stop fence, which you don't have to get this fancy to do crown. I've been doing it for a while, and I just recently made this jig. The advantage of this is that you can just lift it up and take it off. Set it to the side if you need to make some other cuts, and then when I put that back on, it'll be in perfect position. What I've been doing for years, and I have videos on this as well, is using DeWalt crown stops. And whatever miter saw you have, you're gonna have some kind of threaded hole here. Most of the new miter saws have this for their crown stops. But basically it's a piece of L-shaped metal that comes out here. You put it on here and then you tighten it by hand, and it stops the crown at the projection, the ceiling projection of the crown. So we'll get into all that later, but that's an inferior method to this, in my opinion, which is why I made this. I bring that up is because you don't need something this fancy to do it. This is just something that we're doing this pretty much every week. So to have this jig set up it's just a lot better for us. Now I'll show you how this works. And it's the same principle as this little bolt here that I just showed you on the saw, but we're tightening up here. So once we have our ceiling projection of our crown, which is going to be when this crown is sitting on the wall and the ceiling, you're going to want the flat side of the crown flat with the wall. So there's a flat side here that needs to be flush with the fence, and there's a flat side here that needs to be flush with the ceiling. So this represents the wall, this represents the ceiling. Once you get those flush, you can push this jig up and just get it flush. Now, a superior method for getting this perfect, because remember, when you set this up, once this is set up perfect, every cut that you make will be perfect. So take the time to set this up right. That's assuming you find all your angles and get all your stuff nice and tight. So once you know that, take a measurement on it. Like if I was just starting with this crown, I would say, okay, I know I'm flat here. I can see it's perfectly flat there. I can see it's perfectly flat there. Let me get a measurement on that. Boom, we're at 3.5. That's all you need. Now my recommendation from there, what you could do is just get it flat there and then push it up and tighten it. And then get it flat here and then push it up and tighten it. Then you could get away with that. But if you want your stuff to come together real tight, just rip a block down at that ceiling projection, put that block in there, push it up against the fence of your saw, and then push your crown stop up against that block. Now when I tighten this, there's absolutely no question, this is 3.5. So I'll tighten both sides, 3.5. Block comes out, and I know this is exactly spaced 3.5. So that exact thing that I just did by setting this up, you can do the exact same thing when you're using just manufacturer crown stops. So that's simple enough. Once you have your ceiling projection, which is the crown being flat from the base of the saw out this way, then you're good. We're ready to start cutting right now. So one thing about this crown, and you probably won't have this problem, since this thing it looks symmetrical, it looks like it's perfectly uniform, it's not, which I mentioned earlier. If I put this in position right here, you can see an ever so slight gap right there. If I see that gap right there, you can kind of see like a shadow all along this line, all the way across. If I see that, I know that the crown is positioned upside down and I need to flip it to be the right way. So now when I put that there, the crown, we're flush all the way up against the fence right here. So that's going to be a little confusing. It's not a big deal when your crown is almost symmetrical like this. This is a very unique crown, first time using it today. But so I'll show you a few cuts. The only disadvantage to cutting nested is that you're upside down and backwards, which everyone always talks about with crown. So if you're upside down and backwards, you've kind of got to wrap your mind around that when you're installing. And really the only thing I could say about that is just going to take you standing here for a minute and thinking about it. So if I cut this way, it's really going to be like that. I know a lot of people who, when they first start cutting crown nested, they actually turn their back to it and imagine it on the wall. And then they know, like, okay, if I cut this 45 right here and I need it going up on the right hand side, you can envision it like that. So let me give you an example here. We're going to go to 45. We're going to make our first cut of the day here. So we got our 45-degree miter. Now that long point of that miter will touch the wall, and that short point will touch the ceiling. So the furthest point that you measure from is going to be about 3.5 inches down from the wall. So when we go up there and measure the wall, we're not going to measure just from ceiling point to ceiling point. We're going to measure 3.5 inches down or I'm sorry, 4.5 inches down, because this is the wall projection. The ceiling projection is 3.5. So we're gonna measure about 4.5 inches down, and then when we take our measurements, we'll have really accurate measurements. So that's our 45, and that's what I was saying. It makes sense that if you turn your back to it, that could help you in that way. So I wanted to point that out. So just to give you an idea of how this works, we're gonna swing our saw to the other way, 45. I'm gonna make this cut as well. So then we have our two miters coming together like that, okay? So these will come together. It's kind of hard to hold it up like this, but right there. So you can see our saw is set up perfectly. That is just a perfect inside miter right there. Now this piece right here, we call this our sample or adjustment piece, and we'll actually carry this with us up on the ladder. And when we're setting up miters like this, then we'll just like hold this piece and then this piece and make them line up before we shoot it. So having a sample, even when you're coping, is, in my opinion, a necessity. So this piece will follow us the whole job, whether we're just doing mitered corners or coped corners. If we were gonna do coped corners, we would just take this piece, cope out both sides, and then when we set up our cope, we can adjust it, make sure it's perfect, shoot this piece, and then our coped corner sample piece will just come off, and then we'll keep moving along with the job. So hopefully all that makes sense. Hopefully it's just, I'm just trying to keep it real simple. But yeah, we'll go upstairs. We're gonna be doing that room right there. I've been working on that room. Actually, it's been a process for 6 to 8 months, but I haven't even been able to step foot in that room in months, just because life happens. Wifes happen, as they say. So we'll go up there, we'll take some measurements. Our saw is done. We don't have to move our saw for the rest of the job. Our saw is done. We got our sample piece. I got my tape measure. And what's great about the sample piece is we can sketch our room out on it. So in that room we have a wall there, we have a wall here, we have a little dip in here, comes out, and it's like that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inside corners and 1 outside corner. And then what I do usually is write like a pattern on it, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I write the measurement on top of it. So whatever the measurement is up here, and so on and so forth. I'll write it, and then when we go inside, after we cut and we go back up, I just look on the back of the crown, and if I see, oh, that has the number 2 on it, then I just look at my thing, boom, I know exactly where number 2 goes. This is more important when you have just kind of square rooms, because you could get confused. When you've got a lot of different pieces like this, it's pretty obvious where they go. But thought I would throw that tip in there. Like I said, I'm gonna be as thorough as I can, just saying anything I can to help you along the way. So let's go up to the room, take some measurements, and get our first piece of crown installed on the wall and ceiling. So here's the room that we're gonna be putting the crown in first. And if you remember this room, it has been through a lot, but it's been a while since anything has gone on in here. I've kind of been using it as a construction site for other projects I've been doing in the house. And it's quite a mess, but we can work around it. I'm not gonna clean it up right now because I got a lot going on still. So forgive the mess, but you remember the room. I've got some progress done. I got the floor in, it's covered now. Got this door in, got one more door to put in. We're gonna show how we do that as well. But we're focusing on the crown right now. And this is the room that I sketched out earlier. It's just got these inside corners and then 1 outside corner right there. Now usually what I'll do in a room, if I have an outside corner like this one, I'll start there. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get my bullnose trim gauge, which is a marking tool. It just makes it real easy. You've seen me use it on this channel before if you've been following. But I'll put that, I'll mark where my measurements need to be. And then I have an idea for this room. I'm gonna cope every corner in this room. And then on the next room, I'm gonna miter every corner. There's so much debate on whether you should cope or miter your trim. And honestly, I think it's just whatever you're comfortable with. I don't think what it comes down to is how does it look at the end? Did you do a good job? Otherwise, no one gives a rip what you did. If it looks like a tight corner in the corner, who cares? Homeowners don't even know the difference most of the time between copes and miters. And I'm not saying that to disrespect homeowners, but it's just kind of a carpentry thing that I think we spend a little too much time on. But I will go over some of the advantages and disadvantages of coping and mitering and just give you my opinion, because really at the end of the day, that's all it is. We've mitered crown for years, never had any problems. We've coped crown, never had any problems. But I think there's a lot of kind of mysteriousness around it. Like, what's the right way to do it? The right way to do it is the way you feel comfortable with and what's best. But there is a big debate about whether copes separate more with seasonal changes or do miters separate more. And can you get a mitered corner, inside corner as tight as a coped corner? We're gonna experiment with that today. And then we're coming up into the winter. This will all be prepped and caulked this week. When we come up into the winter time, I'll give you an update on which room's doing better. But I can tell you right now, they're gonna be the same. So it's just given too much thought. So with that, let me get my bullnose trim gauge and I will measure this wall, cut my bullnose, CA glue that all up together, and then we'll go ahead and install that. Now to use this sample piece here, I'm gonna go ahead and cope both sides of it. And to do that, I'm gonna use an angle grinder, not a coping saw, because I'm not a fan of coping MDF with a coping saw because it gets just too brittle at the end and it just tends to fall apart. So we'll start with that. So first things first, let's start with this outside corner. First thing I'm gonna do is take my bullnose trim gauge here, hold it about 4.5 inches down, which is the wall projection of the crown, and then just mark right there, those two marks. Those two marks tell me to measure from that wall to this mark here, and from that wall to this mark here. I know this piece right here is gonna be 5/8 of an inch because this right here is always 5/8 of an inch. So it makes it real easy, and this is a very handy tool. So what I will do now is I'll just measure about 4.5 inches down. And for that one, we will do 35 1/4. I'm gonna get it a little bit better. Right there, that's perfect. Let's do 126 and let's do 3/16. 126 and 3/16. Now for this angle here, the miters that we're gonna cut, they're gonna all be 22.5 because we're gonna have 4 cuts actually. And if you multiply 22.5 times 4, you get 90, which is this turn right here. On all of my bull noses, I usually just trust the 90-degree turn because I'm gonna CA glue this all up together. And I have found that just in my experience, it's 90, like 99% of the time. If there is that one time when I go to put it up and it just looks bad, which hasn't happened, which is why I do this method, I would obviously adjust for that. But I have found that all these bullnose corners, I can trust, just cut them all 22.5. It just works out very well. So we'll go with that. We'll cut all of our pieces here. We'll make these straight cuts, and then we'll cope this side in, we'll cope that side in, and then we'll handle the rest of the room shortly after. So we'll go ahead and cut our long pieces first. That way, that's kind of the general idea. You always cut your longer pieces first, so whatever shorter, you have offcuts to use for that. And there's so much I've wanted to do with this stand configuration. I got my track tubes over there in the corner. We'll do a video on that in the future. But this is not how I want this stand to be. It's just not. I've got really good ideas, but hey, this is what we're working with today. So this isn't permanent though. So first thing I'm gonna do, the good thing about coping is it kind of limits your cuts, your miters, because that's a factory edge over there. That's from the supplier. I'm just gonna go ahead and use that so I don't have to even make a cut over here. Then I'm just gonna stretch my tape out, and we're gonna do that long piece first. So that is gonna be, what did I say that was? 126 and 3/16. So we'll go ahead and mark this 126 and 3/16. A lot of people give me some feedback, I'll say, for using a carpenter's pencil as a finished carpenter, but I do keep this thing sharp, and I'm able to make lines that are as thin as the dashes on the tape measure. So it works for me. I like the rigidity of it, and I like how I can mark on anything with it. So I am a carpenter pencil kind of finished carpenter. So we'll go ahead and transfer our line over. Now what I'm doing here, when you measure the crown, it's face down. Stretch your tape out, you mark on the back side of the crown. The problem with that is when you go to cut nested, that mark that you made now becomes not visible because it's pushed up against the fence of the saw. So all you do really, you can see that's my mark there, right there. And then I just transfer that line here. So I need my blade to come about right there. And I'll probably split that pencil line just right in half. So we got that set up. Now we're gonna go to 22.5 degrees. And remember I said 22.5 times 4 will give you 90, and we've got 4 cuts total. So 1, 2, 3. 3 over is 22.5. I know that because this covers up, well, you can't see the angles here. Which, on a side note, I want to get a thick piece of plexiglass so I can see the angles here. If I have to make micro adjustments, I actually have to lift this off. And so that's a problem I'm going to solve. But, so what we'll do, I'm going to bring the tooth of that blade right next to my pencil line. And I'm going to start with it more on the waist side, which would be this side. So here's what I can do for you. So we'll say this is waist or offcut, and this is the side that we're going to keep. So all right, keep. So I'm going to start with my blade more on this. Where's my pencil? Okay. So I'm going to start with my blade more on this side of the line, because if I go past this line, we're short. So just remember that. Always cut more on your waist side than your keep side. The side you want to keep, you can always reshave it down a blade or whatever it is that you made it longer. So we're going to get right up on that. And then you just want to keep the crown firm against the fence. So just keep pressure on it, and then just go ahead and make your cut. So I'm gonna stop right there and show you this. I need to scoot over a little bit more towards my keep line. And the way I'm gonna do that is just pull it over with my thumb, my left thumb. And then I'll bring the blade back down and see where we're at now. And it looks like I'll be pretty good right there. This right here, what I'm doing and what I'm showing you really makes a key to a good install. All these little things, it seems like it's taken a long time, but it's only because I'm explaining it to you. Okay. One other key thing, blade must stop spinning before you raise the blade. So keep the blade down. If you pull it up, the teeth are not made to cut in an upward position, and it'll chip out your nice miter here, which we have a really nice miter here. So yeah, I split that line pretty much right in half, and when we glue that together, that should be a really good looking miter there. So I'll lay this one down here. Now the bullnose, I'm not going to spend too much time on because I have a lot of videos on bullnose crown, but it's basically a 22.5 miter this way then a 5/8 measurement here, and then a 22.5 miter this way. So I'll show you what that looks like. Right. So then when I measure this, I like to just start with a fresh inch there, so I don't have to deal with this here. And then we'll go 5/8. And you can see what I was talking about with the Carpenter pencil. The line is just as fine as a lead pencil. So this is why I use those. I like the lead is a lot stronger. Or it's not a lead pencil, but a mechanical pencil. A lot of people tell me to use a mechanical pencil, but I'm pretty rough and I just break the little tip off all the time. So now that we got that, we're gonna swing. Right now we're at 22.5, then we're just gonna go back 1, 2, 3. We're back at 22.5. Same exact process. Now this right here, you see my thumb? How I can move that? That is something you want to develop too, because you don't want to be like, okay, let me see there. Nope. Okay, let me see now. Nope. Okay, let me see now. You'll be here all day. So use your thumb, keep pressure on it, and I can move that a good 5/8 of an inch back and forth. So I can dial in right on my finish line there. So just try to develop that. It's real easy. It's just pushed up against here, against the fence of the saw, and then you're just sliding your thumb. And that's with base and everything. Any kind of trim work, you can always use this technique to creep up on your line. Again, starting on the waist side, and we'll creep up to it. There's that. So that should be good. We'll go ahead and set that right next here. That's where that's gonna go. And then our last piece is gonna be the short piece, the 35 1/4. So again, I don't have to cut this. It's already ready to go. Stretch my tape out, 35 1/4. So material I'm using right now is MDF, and I'm a big fan of it, especially for crown. One reason is we paint all of our own installations. What did I say, 35 1/4? Yep, that's how you can get sidetracked. That's how you can, talking and working, but 35 1/4. So we paint everything that we do, and having it pre-primed, it's a nice smooth finish. No wood grain, no imperfections in wood like finger joint pine has. So I'm a huge fan of it, but that's what this material is, MDF. So now we're gonna transfer our line over, like I mentioned earlier. Then we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, we're at 22.5. And then we're going to creep up on our line in the opposite direction now this time, since this is the side, the piece that we're keeping. This is our waist, our offcut side. That's what we need to do. We need to creep up now from right to left. And one thing I will say, I'm not a safety guy. You've seen me do crazy things on this channel. You've seen me operate without a blade guard, shoot nail guns without glasses. Every man's safety is his own thing. Once you start hurting other people, then you know, you could have a problem. You know, you're just ram setting through a wall where there's someone resting up against the other side or something. But what I will say is this: if you're right-handed, you want to cut with the right hand pushing down on the miter saw. What you need to learn to do is switch. So now this becomes the adjustment hand, and then you switch to your left hand. It feels a little weird at first, but you have to get used to this, because one thing you don't want to do is this. So we've had 3 or 4 guys work for us, me and John, and almost all of them, the one guy in particular, Jared, I know you're watching this video, I had to tell him, like, Jared, don't do that. So he walked up to the saw and he was like learning how to cut. Or I told him to cut like a 45 on a base or something. He was like, I was like, Jared, look at the position you're in. He was like, Oh yeah, that's probably not good, is it? It's like, that is really not good. You can do it, I've seen people do it, but it's so awkward. And just think, my goodness, just think. If this cuts through hardwood, it'll actually clean cut your bone. So you'd see like your bone would look like a piece of closet rod or something. So just switch. It feels awkward, but you're better off feeling awkward and screwing up a piece or two and going back to the store to buy more than going to the emergency room where you're done for. So just switch. Always keep your arms, if you're cutting on this side, switch. If you're cutting on this side, switch. I'm a big, if I see someone doing that, I'll stop them. All right, so same thing. All right, so I want you to get an idea of where these cuts are ending up. That's my line right there. And you can still see kind of some lead from the pencil there, but that's about how precise you want to be. It's called finished carpentry. It's not rough carpentry. It's not woodworking. I'm not a woodworker. I don't believe that I am. I don't make tables and cutting boards and furniture, but our main purpose is to finish something. Our main goal is to make something look pretty. And if we're not precise, it's not pretty. If we got huge gaps, you know, yeah, some caulking can fill things, and that's necessary when you've got, like, I saw a joist up there when I was measuring, it dips down. There's nothing I can do about that. The only thing I can do about that is push it up, shoot it into that joist, use MDF. It's a more flexible material than woods. And just caulk it. I mean, that's the world that we live in. So, but we're not just using caulking as a first choice when it comes to gaps and things like that. So that's where we're at right now. Now what I need to do, so this is where our corner is going to come together. It's going to come like this. All right. And then we're going to have, I really like this crown too. We've never used it before, and I like how simple and just clean, streamlined it is. So this is going to be our corner right there. What I'm going to do before I glue this, and I recommend this if you're a beginner, I usually don't do this, but I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to hold these pieces up not glued and make sure they fit. Especially if you're a beginner, you want to hold this up, make sure it fits before you glue it. Once you glue it, these pieces are trash if they're wrong. If I glue this up and this is an inch shorter or something, or longer even, now longer you could probably salvage, but that CA glue is so strong, it just pulls everything apart and you lose like an inch or two off each side. So this would be trash, this would be trash. So just hold it up in position before you glue it. It's going to make it so much better. And one other thing I need to do before we go up there and install this and glue it together and whatever is I need to cope out a corner that I can use as a sample. So I did one earlier with the angle grinder, and this is what we end up with, a nice tight cope right there. But I'm going to actually do it to this piece because I'm going to be having copes going this way and copes going in this way. I'm just going to take this piece and cope both sides of it. Now for the coping, that straight edge right there is gone. We're going to cut that off on the saw. This straight edge is gone. That's going to get cut off on the saw. And then all this exposed material here, which if you look at the crown like this, you can see when it's in position and you look down at it, you can see everything that's going to be in the way. So all that gets cut off. Now we'll go to my workbench here, which is this yellow piece of fiberglass that doesn't get used as much as it should. And I gotta buy a toolbox. But when you're coping this with a coping saw, this MDF, and you get right up to that line, it's very brittle. Even when I pull it out right there, you could hear it just snap. You see that? That happens along this white line that you need to be perfect. So with that, we don't use a coping saw when we do MDF. This is for woods, actual woods, finger joint pine, poplar, whatever. And a lot of times we're using a coping foot anyways on a jigsaw. So first things first, I'm gonna cut these two straight edges off first, because it's just easier than grinding them off. But this, I also have videos on this. I'm not going to get too detailed into this, but this is basically taking this grinder. This is a, I believe an 80 grit flap disc, which really needs to be changed. It's been used a lot. And this grinder is just cutting across here, and we're tracing out all of this to that white line the best that we can. We're not going to get too close over there because we can always come back with the file and make it better. So here we go. Like I said, I'm not gonna explain this too much, but you can watch me do it. So this is kind of what we end up with. Just a back cut to cut all that junk out of there that's gonna get in the way. And we'll check it out. We'll see how we did first try. That's pretty good. You can probably take a little bit more out from the top, but that's pretty good. And then, do you need a big grinder like this to do this? I mean, this is really overkill. I don't need this, but I also didn't need this dually truck either. I'm just kind of an overkill kind of person. So you could do this with a smaller Dremel or something. Smaller grinder. There's like a, this is a 60 volt max grinder for like metal working. But I'm always of the mindset that if I can get the beefier tool, I may need it one day. I may need to grind like some piece of metal down, which has happened. So like I said, I don't need a dually. What am I doing with this thing? So I'm gonna do the other side, and we will see. This will be perfect, at least for setting it up. And when we do our actual copes, then they're gonna need to be dead on. So basically, I go into the corner, and you'll see this when I'm up there. I roll this around. This is the actual piece right here. And then I kind of just roll it around until these things get married and they look perfect together and they live happily ever after. Then I shoot it, and now I know I can pull this off, and when I come back in with the real piece, it's already in position like that. So like that. Now that's pretty significantly a good cope right there. So when I cut that straight edge off earlier, this is the reason. This is called a butt joint right here. This butt joint right here is just, it wouldn't work any other way. You'd have this little triangle piece hanging over, and then you'd be looking at what's called a jack cope, which I don't do. I just do either cope or miter. So if this bothers someone though, and you have to cope, and again, I've never met any homeowner who's like, hey, I need copes, man. It's like, they don't know or they don't care. They just want it to look good. So I'm trying to show you that, how to make it look good. All right, next thing you gotta do, we'll go up there with all of our actual pieces, hold them in position, make sure they're good, glue them up. I'll show you the installation process. Talk to you about nailing strips, hitting studs, all that. Let's go up there. So now we have our long piece tacked up here. And this is what I was talking about, the dry fit, where it's no glue, obviously. So we want to make sure we're right on our line. You know, we want to take into account any of that sagging right there. and I can see that once that sagging is pushed out, it's gonna put me right on my line because I'm just slightly short right now. But for the dry fit, this is gonna be perfect. So I'm gonna put this piece in position here. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is just, hey, are my pieces long enough? Are they too short? Are they too long? This is gonna tell you everything you need to know. So actually, oh, that's way down. Okay, here we go. Yeah, no, this is perfect. So the reason you'd want to do this is because if you don't have a lot of experience on the tape measure and you're not confident in your measuring skills, you can save yourself a lot of headache just by holding these 3 pieces up. All right, that looks good. Let's glue it, rather than just gluing it and, oh man, I need to shave an 1/8 or a 1/16 off this, and then it's already glued. And once it's glued with long pieces like this, you're not taking it back to the saw and mitering it. It's just waste. So really take that into consideration. If it's a small outside corner or something, I've glued up things before and they've been too long because I'm a human too. And then I've taken it out to the saw all glued up, rested it on the saw, and cut it when it was all glued. But that's only gonna work for short pieces. That's not gonna work for something long like this. So we tack that up. So now that we've got this good, we're gonna glue it up. We know our measurements are dead on. Then we're gonna go and install this. Finished Carpentry TV is brought to you by Finished Carpentry TV CA glue for all your MDF needs. But seriously, this stuff is really good for MDF. It's a must in my opinion. If I'm doing wood, then I use wood glue, but for MDF and PVC or rubber flex mold, this CA glue is the best you can get. And this stuff is all for sale if you want to support the channel. These are the 2-ounce CA glues, and they're any of them that we sell definitely support our channel and making these videos, so we really appreciate it. But what I'm going to do is get these things put together. That looks pretty good right there. Check this one out one more time. That looks really good. So what we're going to do, we're going to CA glue this stuff together. Glue one side, then activate the other. And like I always use this stuff a lot. Like I always say, you really get one chance to get this stuff lined up properly without having to remake it, which has happened to me. So it's really important that you kind of hinge it together. And what I mean by that is you get the surface areas that are going to be touching connected first, then you fold them onto each other. A lot of people do that with wood glue and masking tape. They'll masking tape 2 pieces together, glue it, and then fold them together like an envelope is what I call it, like an envelope method. So this came out pretty good. Nice corner there. Looks nice and tight. Now the next thing will be just gluing this piece now onto the longer piece. So I always start with the shorter pieces, obviously. It just makes it easier. And then we'll glue the longer one on the last. It looks pretty good. And I'll probably be able to show you that kind of envelope technique I was talking about just now. Put our bead on here. Our strawberry scented accelerator, which that's not even a joke. It really is strawberry scented. So then we just touch the surfaces that are going to touch, and we fold it together. Hold it for a good 10 seconds, just for good measure. And that's my first time to ever glue up this crown. Like I said, I've never used this crown before. Not bad for my first time. Everything feels pretty decent. Lined up nice and well. So now we have our outside corner ready to go in. We'll put the camera on the tripod. We'll get that corner set up, and then I'll explain to you this corner. That is exactly what we want to see right there. We got a nice tight fit all the way at the bottom. He's gonna get that side lined up with the sample and set in place. And then I'll shoot over here and we'll get this side lined up too. So here's the deal where we're at now. We've got this tacked up. We got 2 nails in the far corner over there. I got 1 nail right here and it's loosely in here. Now what you can do, what people do, they actually will find the wall projection of the crown and snap a chalk line. We're not a fan of that because big reason for us, we're working in finished furnished homes already. If we can avoid using a chalk line, we're gonna do that. I've noticed that the crown likes to naturally fall in place when you have a corner right here and a corner right here so close together. You're not going to have a whole lot of twisting because they don't want to twist. They want to be flat. They want to be exactly where they need to be. So if I know this wall projection is, let's say, 4 inches, and that's about where that is without really any adjustments. So if I push this up into place with my cope right there, then I know that that's a nice tight corner right there. So the whole purpose of this, if you've been wondering the whole time, what are you doing with that? This is it. This is to set the corner. We set the corner, that's what we call it. Hey John, I'm gonna go set this corner. Okay, he knows this is what I'm doing. I'm taking a sample, I'm adjusting this piece, and then I'm gonna get the next piece ready. So we're not sitting here like with 2 full pieces trying to get them, like I said, married so they can live happily ever after right here. The only bad part of this is, well, here's what I'll tell you. The longer this piece is, the more accurate this is going to be. If you have a little short corner piece and you're setting it, you may have a joist dip right here, a joist in the ceiling running this way. If it dips right here, or right here, I'd be in trouble a little bit, maybe not so much. But the longer this piece is, the better you are. But we found that this is a good size. I'll never measure them, but it's about, 16, 17 inches. So just keep that in mind. There are some things you need to think about with setting corners like this. So once I have this set up, I'm gonna go ahead and install it. I'm gonna shoot it. Now, I know right there in that corner, I have a stud right there. Boom. There's a stud because the corner framing is there. What you won't notice with us is we don't have nailing strips on the ceiling. It is something that I believe is not necessary. There's no load on this crown. There's no weight that's gonna be on it, no load, like I just said. It's not gonna have any pressure on it. If you can hit studs in the wall, then you're gonna be fine with a V pattern in the ceiling. I'm a big believer in that. So a V pattern is a clamp nail like that, the letter V. If that was in the drywall, then this crown is not gonna go anywhere, and I can attest to that. I've been doing this for a while, and I've never had crown. I mean, you're always going to have settling, especially foundational issues. You might have some cracks or separating, but you never have anything fall down, especially when you're in the studs. Now use your common sense. Like I said, I know I've got a stud there in the frame, and I know I've got 2 studs right here in the corner frame, so I can shoot that too. Right now I'm in studs. Now, like I mentioned, we're furnished and finished houses that we're working in. We're not working for any builders. We're not snapping lines. We're trying not to draw on the walls as much. especially if it's wallpaper, especially if it's some kind of faux finish. So at this point, you could take your stud finder, put it on the wall, and then you can find your next stud, which we should have one coming up here soon. This is an edge finding one, so I'm just gonna shoot to the left of it. No marks on the wall. Like I said, faux finishes and wallpaper. That's gonna hold this crown. One thing you need to think about too, it's not really a big deal with this crown. Details. Don't shoot in the details of the crown. If you had a really ornate crown, you know, this is like the least ornate, but I really like it. Don't shoot into those details because it's going to make it a lot more time consuming when you go and nail fill these things. Try to shoot in an area that is maybe hidden but not in a detail. Here we don't have that choice, so we're just going to shoot it. Another thing you can do, I know a stud is there, and I can actually, with this crown, I can get on top of that stud again. Bam. I can get another one in this stud too. Bam. And I'm usually a 2-nail guy. If I know there's a stud, it's getting 2 nails. Part of the reason for that is we're using 18 gauge brad nails. We don't use 16 gauge finish nails. The reason for that, we are using MDF a lot of times. So the smaller diameter nail we can get into the material without having it puff up or volcano, whatever you want to call it, that's the better for us. Now I want you to look that I haven't even shot into the ceiling yet at all, and I have full confidence that this crown will never fall. I've got 2 nails in each stud. I've got that taken care of, and I can say with confidence this is a solid installation. Think of kitchen cabinets. Don't overthink this stuff. Don't think it has to be like it's got to be like strong like framing. It really doesn't. It's just a decorative piece of trim. Don't get into that mindset where you just beat yourself up because, oh, it's not framed, or you think I'm doing it wrong. Dude, in the comment section below, whatever you're typing, this is good. So I'm just telling you from experience, this is legit stuff right here. No one's going to be hanging on it. Like I said, think of your kitchen cabinet crown. It's mostly, if you don't have ceiling mount, if you don't have cabinets that go all the way to the ceiling, and then you have a crown that's floating with no top support that's just nailed into the cabinet, and it's fine. No one's going to hang on it. If they did, it probably would snap off, but no one has the option to even hang on this. It's a decorative piece of trim. You're not building a structural piece here. Now, if you get into beams and coffered ceilings, you know, obviously you're going to want more support, and you lay all that out on the joist. But this is just crown molding. Let's not overthink it here. So with the ceiling here, let me change this mode here. With the ceiling here, we're doing our V pattern. So we're going to go left, right, and that's what I showed you here. You go left, right, like that. These are 1 3/4 nails. So one other thing to be aware of too, be aware of what's behind your wall. Plumbing, electrical, there's no way to really know of everything, but common sense goes a long way. I've got a bathroom right there. If I wanted to do like a wainscot against the plumbing wall, I'm not going to use as big of nails. I will definitely use 18 gauge nails because they're less likely to damage some kind of pipe or whatever. So just keep that in mind. So we got this installed. We're going to check our fit here with this cope. That looks really good to me. And we're going to roll with that. We're going to roll with that. And I can shoot a nail. Once I come here too, I can shoot a nail and just make that hug really tight. And from here on out, it's just coping inside corners. So if you can think of anything in the comments below that I'm missing, if you have a question, let me know, and we'll cover it on the next video. But I'm gonna go ahead and finish installing this, show you my process. All right, so I got that set up, got the short side installed. Now the bullnose, I will treat it like a delicate piece, because especially with like a pine or something, you can split it. There will be no nail here. The CA glue is sufficient, but I will do one to the right here, and one to the left here. And that's sufficient for that. That's not gonna go anywhere. I'll also come to the left here and to the right here. So that piece is glued and basically clamped on there. There have been times whenever we've done something wrong, actually put the wrong crown in or something like that, and I've installed something just like what I'm showing you with 18 gauge brad nails, with CA glue, and I've had to rip it out because it wasn't needed there for some reason. And when I pull it out, it is hard to get out. I mean, it is clamped on there. So this is the way I do it. I have full faith in it. If I didn't, I wouldn't be sharing it with you. You can trust this. So we'll put another nail in this stud here. And then from there, what we'll do is, a lot of times, like I say, we're working in finished homes. We'll just tack it up and then we can go back with the stud finder and then hit the studs. It's just a lot easier that way, so we don't have to mark on finished walls. So we'll just tack it up in the drywall. We'll hit the obvious studs in our corners, and then we'll go with our little stud finder and just tighten it up. So what that would look like is me just pushing this up like this, popping a few nails in it to tack it. This is when we're doing 600 feet in a day. So we're just running through, boom, boom, boom. We're shooting this up. Then we're going to keep moving along here and then kind of pushing it up. Like I mentioned earlier, the crown wants to set cradled, especially if you're setting outside corners and inside corners first. Leave the middle sections alone. Once you have those corners, it wants to be cradled in that position naturally. You're not gonna have to fight with it. If you have like a built-in or something, or like a door where you need a proper reveal, then definitely snap a line and make sure you have a proper reveal. But if I'm like an 1/8 here and like a 1/16 here and then caulking, you're never gonna see it. And the caulking really blends everything. I'm not talking about caulking to fill in mistakes. I'm talking about caulking, just caulking. Like, you're gonna have to caulk this no matter what, because there's a space there of texture and a flat piece of crown, and you'll never get it. This is as flush as it'll be. So you're gonna have to caulk that. And I'm not a big fan of the big, just caulking everywhere, just a big bead. I like to just cut the tube on the caulking, maybe like just a tiny hole on the caulking tube, and then just fill it in and then push it in so you still have that 90-degree profile between the crown and the ceiling. You're not having a big rounded over caulking. That to me is ugly. If you're a painter out there who does that, man, please stop. Because we go through the trouble of making this look good, and then someone's just like, yep, here's a 1/4 inch of caulking. And it's really not good, because as time goes on, it shrinks. It's more likely to separate and crack and everything. You just give it what it needs. So for in that example, boom, 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 we're running through this room, and I'll start here. Like I said, it's an edge finder, so I'm gonna shoot to the left of it. Let's go, let's keep going. Edge finder, shoot to the left of it. So it's not hard to do that. Saves you time from marking on the wall and the trouble of going back and touching that up later. So, and these are really easy to fill. Again, that's why I'm using 18 gauge nails. So then we'll just, that's it. That is how I install crown molding. If you hired me to install your crown molding, this is what you would see, what you would get. This is it. So we're gonna keep going. We're gonna throw that piece in, show you how that cope comes together. We'll throw that piece in, show you how that cope comes together. In the next room, and then we'll finish out this, cope that corner. The next room, we're gonna miter it. So let me grab that little piece and this piece measurements, get those in, show you how that looks, and we'll keep moving right along here. You can stretch out your tape use the ladder, pull back on the ladder, get a good tape. This is a Stanley Fat Max 11-foot standout. Let's do 18 1/8. 18 1/8. Then I'll grab that. What did I say? 18 1/8. 118 1/8. So yeah. You guys are distracting, man. Let me show you that again. Bam. All right. What I'll show you here. So if you're looking up at this, you can see that's nice and tight all around. But what you will see, and this happens a lot when there's an outside corner. You got an outside corner framing here, drywall dips in a little bit until the next stud. There's no stud there, but with that V pattern, I can tighten that gap up. And I'll show you that right now. That's gonna happen through pressure in that V pattern. So pressure, and then we'll get another one off. And we'll get another one in there. And you see how that proves the clamping power of that nailing pattern. And that right there is definitely caulkable. You gotta kind of do trade-offs. Do I want to blast this and turn it into Swiss cheese? Or do I want to fill in a 1/32 gap or whatever? So think about that stuff. And then when you measure on the cope, you're still going wall to wall. Remember, you're cutting off that bottom edge where that butt joint is. So we'll do 40.5 plus, or 40 9/16 for you technical fools out there. All right, next time you see me, I'll have an angle grinder in my hand. Really? No. All right. The Texas Angle Grinder Massacre. Before we move inside, once we have our angle grinding done, or we think it's done, we'll just take a piece and see what areas we need to work on, if any. And I think I'm cool with that, if y'all are cool with it. So it's my house. No, that's good. So with this, when you have these MDF corners coped, especially when I'm doing like I'm doing with the grinder out there, I'm putting a pretty good back cut on it, they do become brittle. So as you're walking through, you know, slamming them, hitting them on stuff, just be careful and try not to hit them on stuff anyways. But if you do tap that edge on something, it could break, it will break. So just be careful with that. With this thing, we will check it out. Yep, that looks good. I'm good with that. That looks really good. So I'm gonna just hold this with my left hand, grab the gun, and then just, again, since I don't have that stud finder in my hand, we're just gonna tack. And that one tack will hold it. Then we'll move our ladder over here. And the process continues. So we're nice. That's a good measurement right there. And we'll set this corner, get it ready for the next cope again. Don't make the mistake of shooting this piece. Again, we got that corner frame there. Come back with your stud finder. That's it, man. Take that and go make some money. except don't come into my service area, because if I see you, just kidding. I'll go ahead and shoot this. All right, so there you have it. That's kind of my little breakdown on crown molding. I know some of the saw part could have been confusing. I try to break it down as simple as possible. I'm a little rusty on the videos, so forgive me for that. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll go through and look at them, and I'll answer as many as I can. Last thing I'll mention, in my nailing pattern, since your crown sits at an angle like that, what you want to do is shoot up. We'll hope that doesn't come out. You're shooting up in the top of the crown vertically, and then in the side horizontally. So you make like an L shape with your nailing pattern. What you don't want to do is shoot at an angle like that, because a lot of times you won't even get any penetration into the drywall. What will happen is it'll be too much of an angle. It'll hit the drywall and it'll just bend, and the nail will be pointless. And any nail that's pointless, you still have to fill it in. So don't make more work for yourself. If you're shooting these nails, shoot the top of the crown vertical, the bottom of the crown horizontal, not at an angle in either direction. Same thing on the top. Don't shoot it like that. That one probably would have grabbed. But if I was meaning to shoot it more like that. Just think vertical and horizontal nailing pattern. So yeah, that's it. Leave any questions in the comments below. Next video, we're gonna be mitering some of this and showing you in another room how that's gonna look, the process on that. And then I'll probably do a whole separate video on mitering versus coping and kind of talk to you about the benefits and disadvantages of both and things of that sort. And then if you want to see us prep this, let me know as well. If you want to see how we nail fill this, how we caulk it, because we do all that stuff as well. And we can show you, we're all about efficiency. We'll show you the most efficient way to do it. We'll show you how to mask that stuff to get a clean paint line, and even some cutting in if you want to see it. So there you have it, basic knowledge on how to install crown molding. Leave any questions below. See you next time.